Good afternoon, everybody. It is March 7th at roughly 11, almost 11:40. And my small clock over here is basically dead. I need new batteries in it. Otherwise, I would have told you it is a quarter till 5. No, it's not. Anyhow, because today is Sunday, and I decided the other day, excuse me, coffee burps. Gotta love them. I decided a couple days ago that I was going to. In fact, I thought I decided this a while further back, but I'm going to. I'm going to go ahead and do it. On Sundays, I'm going to try to do Bible study stuff. I went through some of my old notes and whatnot, and decided that I was going to go through them, read the passage, and then discuss what I feel about the passage. I'm doing this 2 reasons. What caused it to happen today? Reason number 1 is I've been planning on it for a while and I just haven't got around to it because my brain sometimes Sunday morning I'm like, I'm off. I don't have to work. I can focus on doing this. Never mind. I can focus on doing certain things, so I decided I'm going to. That in fact, I woke up this morning and I like waking up and looking at my emails and anything that has a number on the app or group of apps I look at. Well, this morning I looked at my Facebook, and Facebook reminded me that one of my old Ozark Christian College professors, it's his birthday. The professor is Gary Zusiak, from Joplin, Missouri, where the college is. And he was my Old Testament teacher, my Old Testament professor. And he was the one gentleman who told me that even though I have a disability, take everything one step at a time. Go through, read the passage that you're supposed to read through in the Bible according to the curriculum. And if you don't understand it, write it out, and maybe it will help you understand what it's trying to say. That, in fact, he was the one professor that said, look, if you're having problems, come to me, and either we'll set up a time frame that I can come see him, and we'll work on whatever together. Colleges, for the most part, they weren't geared towards people who had certain issues with education, like me, between dyslexia and ADD. And a lot of colleges don't know how to handle it, but don't have a program to help those who are trying to go through college get through the materials. Because, and I understand this, for the most part, most mainstream colleges want to basically treat you like the way you're going to get treated out in the rest of the world after education. So if you can't handle college, most colleges think that you can't handle the world. Well, I might not be able to handle college. I might not be able to handle mainstream educational systems because of who I am and what my problems are. But I have proven in the last 20 years or more that the whole idea that somebody with a disability, whether it's a learning disability, a physical disability, a psychological disability, whatever the disability is, unless you have a disability that literally causes your brain to be more like a child or somebody. Well, take for instance, and I am not trying to put anybody down, but my wife used to work with, and I hate using the word retarded, but we prefer to call them mentally handicapped adult women and men who they looked like adults for the most part, unless they had like a physical quality that makes them look or seem like they're not capable of handling the world. But most people, even people with mental, I hate using the word retardation, It's one of those words that I have tried all my life well, not all my life, but all my adult life since New York, to not use. But those who have um, the genome or whatever it is that scientists have proven that causes these adult people to have a mindset of a child. I have seen both men and women who mentally they could not handle the adult world. Let's put it that way. And the program that my wife worked with, which is called AHRC out in New York, um, they have workshops. So these people can go to these workshops and do simple stuff like stuffing envelopes, putting stuff in packaging. I learned from these people that even though that they have this issue, they can be taught how to do simple things like folding a piece of paper, putting it in an envelope, and sealing the envelope. Um, Things of that nature. Then they would go out to, they would take them out to programs where they would spend a couple hours every so often with um, elderly patients in elderly home care systems and whatnot. And just go there and play cards or talk or whatever. I never went with them out to do their jobs and whatnot. I just volunteered every so often to go into with my wife to the day hab programs, and most of the time the day hab programs, it was just I was coming to drop off lunch for Jerry Ann when I wasn't working. But when she started to become a manager at a group home, after Superstorm Sandy, we lived in the managerial apartment, which was basically a one room. Actually, it was a bedroom, living room, a kitchenette. I mean, barely do anything in the kitchen except for cook and clean, and a bathroom. We lived there for a while until we moved out here. But for the most part, these people are gentle, sweet, loving people. Some of them have issues that cause them to act out their emotional issues, whether it was, especially more in the men than the ladies, some aggression. And a lot of times you have to take it with a grain of salt because you got to realize these people have a mental disability that makes it hard for them to function as actual adult people in the world and the rest of the world. And I know from dealing with these people, from dealing with them, dealing with, I mean, when I was in Yellowstone, I dealt with not only visitors to Yellowstone who came from all walks of life all over the world, but actual co-workers who came from various countries who got a work visa to come and work in Yellowstone National Park or one of the national parks here in America. Yellowstone is the one that most people want to work in because one, Yellowstone is the flagship for all national parks worldwide. In fact, Yellowstone National Park was the first national park or national preserve anywhere in the world. It was literally the first one. And because of its location with the various wildlife, the various climates, the various terrain, the geothermal activities, Yellowstone became not only the flagship of all other national parks, but it also became like where a lot of different scientists came in the beginning to learn how to study geothermal activities, geysers, mud pots, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of things about our country that we can be proud of. There's a lot of things about our country that I'm not proud of because of the factor of we have fallen so far behind because of our own pride that we've fallen into fifth. Either the wind just blew my mailbox closed, my mailman just closed it. But we've fallen behind in recycling, renewable, non-polluting energies. We're not the best anymore. But the thing is, there's a lot of things about our country that can be, put up there at the top level of achievements. But anyhow, before I go off into a different tangent, what was I talking about there? Oh yes, um, I had a lot of education, a lot of things that helped me get into a realm of thought or realm of life that is more beneficial than, because I think about some of the times where it's like, if I had not gone to Ozark Christian College, where would I be today? Because before I went to Ozark Christian College, I was not really one of the most positive people around. Hold on a second. Oh, yellow. Little mustache hair got in my mouth. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's getting close to time to trim it down. Trim it back a little bit. Even though I don't want to. But this Old Testament passage is Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 to 18. And it says, to Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from. Curse the ground before you. Through painful toil you will eat from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plant of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. From dust you are, and to dust you will return. I had written that in blue, or highlighted that in blue, because blue is for, basically I marked it down as life thoughts. Adam and Eve were the first sin. They committed the first sin by not listening to the commandment not to eat from this tree, the tree of life. Or as some people just say, the fruit of life. Now, the fact is that God is rebuking Adam for listening to his wife. That's one of the first things that when I read it, it comes across my mind. Because, yes, it is understandable that Eve was tricked by the serpent, or in this case, the representation of the serpent represents the devil, or evil, and she listened to it and ignored the fact that God told them not to eat from that tree. Now, there's all kinds of, a lot of people say, oh, well, that tree had apples. No, there's no depiction of what kind of fruit was on that tree. And beings, according to some scholars, that they have an idea of where that Garden of Eden was, because of the descriptions from the Bible. In that area, there weren't apples. In that area, there weren't even bananas. In fact, the area was like mostly plums and apricots and fruit of that nature. Some people say it doesn't matter what kind of fruit that we call it, because the fact it was in the Garden of Eden, and it could have been any kind of fruit, because if God created it and it was paradise, it could be anything. In fact, you can sit there and go, well, since my favorite fruit is whatever, it could be that kind of fruit. Who knows? There's no real strong description of what kind of fruit it was. It was a fruit, a fruit-bearing tree, and that particular tree, God said don't eat from. The second thing is the fact that like I said, God's rebuking Adam for listening to his wife. Well, now, is it the fact that he listened to the wife and the wife got him to take a bite of the fruit? Or is the rebuking because of the fact that, according to, well, a lot of scholars basically said back in those days, men were in control of everything. Now, I don't believe that men can be in control of everything, because there are some things that as a man, I know, for instance, I have no control over. In fact, I know, for instance, as a man, I have difficulty with a lot of different things that I rely on my wife to do that calls for judgment or decision making. Now, I know for the most part, when it comes to decision making, Jay-Ann and I try to talk to each other and make the decision as a couple. So my problem with that very first verse, the fact that he's getting rebuked because he listened to his wife. Okay, that kind of tells me that in some ways that Adam and Eve weren't making choices, not together, but the fact of that they weren't allowed to make choices. Or if there was a choice to be made, it had to be made by one particular person, and that should have been Adam, because Adam was the first humanoid or human to be created, because Eve was created from a rib out of Adam. I don't like that verse, because of the fact that every way I try to spin it, there's not a lot of positive attitude out of that. I know for the most part, even a lot of our ancestral peoples, men were basically in control and were the decision makers. For just about every culture that I've ever read about, the old school peoples, it was always upon a man. Man was the one making the decisions. Whether it's because it was written in the Bible or what, but then I think about my own people, the Norsemen. I read enough about the Norsemen to know that men and women were equal. A woman can run our own property, our own run a farm or whatnot, even run a whole village without a man. I know a lot of men didn't like that idea, but yeah, it was that was Norse people. Everything was equal. When a couple had to make a decision, they discussed it before the final decision was made. Even though for the most part it was the man telling whomever what the decision was. I think that men and women are just about capable of doing each other's jobs. I know a lot of men, even one of my own family members, think that a woman's the kitchen is the woman's business, not the man's business. Well, I grew up differently. My dad would do all the cooking and whatnot, but mom would do the dishes for the most part, so it was shared. When my father passed away, once I learned how to cook, I was doing both, unless mom decided that she wanted to do it, but I was doing both for the most part, because mom was the one working as much as she could to provide for both of us. And I was more than happy to do I was more than happy to clean. In fact, I loved cleaning. Don't know why. Just loved making sure my house looks clean. Nowadays, not so much, because I'm too tired, too sore. Then we'll go down to, we'll go through this real quick. After the whole bit about, God basically rebuking Adam for eating from the fruit, he basically says, God tells Adam, curses the ground before you. Through painful toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life. Okay. All the days of our lives, we will basically toil, and whatever fruits we gain from our labors is what we'll eat from. Well, back in old school days when farming and basically dealing with oxen to plow your fields and plant your seed and whatnot to grow produce. And back then they didn't have the chemicals or whatnot to fight weeds or pests or whatnot. They would have to get up literally every day and go pull weeds and try to keep the insects and whatnot from devouring their plants. Or if they didn't have plants, they had to deal with trying to keep their livestock safe from predatory animals or whatnot. So yeah, back then it was a hard life. Literally, it was a hard life. And it talks in here about how it will produce thorns and thistles, and you'll eat from the plants of the field. Thorns and thistles back then were basically weeds. Now, I know in certain parts of the world, like Scotland, thistles. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a Scottish thistle, the way it's made. Yes, the thistle, the thistle was a thorny plant, but it had a beautiful flower bud, usually purplish color. Don't know how edible they were, but I sure wouldn't want to try to eat one. And basically, we're talking about the the Mediterranean, Israel type area, Middle East area. They grew both thorny bushes, thorny plants, like if you've ever lived in Arizona or the desert, the tumbleweeds. That's a thorny weed. It grows into this weird ball-like shape, and then the roots dry up and break off, and you have that tumbleweed. That's a very thorny plant. If you've ever had to try to remove them from your fence line or whatnot at your houses, especially if you live in places like rural Arizona or New Mexico, Texas, maybe even California, that's a pain in the butt, because they're like, what did one person once call them? Iron something or other. Because Vector, they're very tough, they're very hard, they're very thorny. So trying to break them up and hoping that a piece of it doesn't snap off and fly up into your face or hooks into your arm or whatnot. Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with those. So yeah, back then it was a very tough life. And you hear stories throughout the Old Testament about how even in the New Testament, the various people who literally had a hard life and they toiled all their days for what they could eke out of the land. Yet they praised God every moment of the day for what they had. You don't hear about stuff like that nowadays. Stuff like that nowadays is such a rarity. It's unheard of. But yeah, I can see, it's a point back then, doing something like that because of something you did that you were told not to do. Yeah, that's punishment. I mean, that's a that's a punishment and a half to. Sorry, my hair is like getting all over the place. That's a punishment and a half just to deal with the weeds and the thorns and all the different stuff that they had to deal with. And it says, by the sweat of your brow, you'll eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and dust you will return. That first part, the sweat of your brow, that has to do with the toils of life. Even in modern day life, we have toils. Doesn't matter what level of education or employment you're in, there's some form of toil. Now, toil could be taken as a physical labor issue, or it could be taken as a mental issue due to your job or your life or whatever. See, as somebody who's never seen a lot of money, who's never been up there in the middle to upper class type of living, I can only go by what I've had to deal with. My first serious major job that I kept more than a couple months, yes, there are jobs that I had in the past that I would not keep because of the fact I was young and dumb and just didn't feel like dealing with the struggles. I did not want to be on the struggle bus. Even though I didn't realize the struggle bus my mom was on because of trying to make enough income to pay for an adult child, because I was in my 20s, plus the rent and the utilities and all the other things. And I knew I couldn't have a lot back then, even back then, because of the fact that there was not enough money for me to ask mom to get me what I wanted. And I'm being cold and brutally honest about myself because of the fact that was the truth. It wasn't until I moved to New York and got married and realized I need to buckle down and just stop leaving jobs just because I don't want to deal with the various issues that I did not want to deal with. And Jerry was pulling me out of my antisocial shell of sorts. I'm still kind of antisocial, but I'm not so antisocial. I'm not so antisocial nowadays that I won't deal with people. Back before I met her, I didn't want to deal with people. No. I was, too many things, too many issues with people that I did not want to deal with because of my own problems. But it wasn't until New York that I started to realize, hey, look, I gotta help support my family. I can't just sit back and let Jerry Ann do most of the work. It's not right. I started to realize the struggles of daily life between getting up in the morning time, getting dressed, catching a bus, whatnot, and going to work, or driving to get to work. A lot of different things that just kind of made me go, oh my God. This is more than I ever thought it was. I was on the struggle bus. And I wasn't on the financial struggle bus. I was on the dealing with daily life struggle bus. Just getting up, getting dressed, going to work, doing what I had to do to work, dealing with the people, dealing with the frustration, dealing with whatever annoying issues came my way. I started to realize, though, even though at first it was a struggle because I just didn't want to deal with people, but then I realized, hey, look, there's other people around you who are working just as hard, struggling just as much as you are. They're talking with each other. They're wanting to know you. They're wanting to, they're just wanting camaraderie. They want teamwork. They want a lot of different positive things. And I started to realize it's not as hard as it seems once you get to know your coworkers, and if you can find common ground and get along and whatnot, things are not that difficult until something comes up that's out of the blue and everybody's like, yeah, okay, sure. And we do our jobs, and yeah, okay, at the end of the day, or when there's no work to be done or everything's basically done, you can have the camaraderie and talk. In fact, for those of us who are skilled enough to basically have open conversations while working a meat slicer or something like that without getting yourself hurt, it's great. It's awesome. It can be fun. But we're still toiling to get through the day, even though it doesn't seem like it, because the day either goes by really quickly or you're just having a good time doing it. As for that last part, dust you are made, dust you will return. I'm going to go into a scientific point. According to scientists, we are made up of various elements that are earth elements. Various levels of carbon, oxygen, even our very own skin has a low level, what do they call it? The type of mineral, and I can't remember what it is, but we've got like various elements within our own bodies that come from Earth that are similar in various ways to Earth elements: zinc, lime, oxygen, carbon, magnesium. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But yes, when we get back in the old days before embalming and airtight caskets and things like that, we dig up bodies nowadays. Archaeologists dig up bodies. In fact, there's bodies in old school cemeteries that have been there since 1800s. That I'm pretty sure that if you dug the casket up and whatnot, it was a wooden casket that is probably rotted away with a carcass or the remains of a body as just bones, because the calcium in our bones take longer to. In fact, I think bones are the one thing that don't seem to deteriorate. The calcium in our bones don't deteriorate even after death. It takes, I don't know how, nobody's ever determined how long it takes for a body, the bones, the skeleton of a body to deteriorate, because the old Egyptian bodies and whatnot, even the bodies on the Oslo ship weren't even deteriorated; they were just bones. So our bones basically is almost a stone. Like if you were to take a either limestone, a chunk of limestone, or a chunk of granite, and carve it into a bone, it's gonna be that shape forever until something occurs to cause it to break. Some of the mountains around the world that have not changed its shape or density factor are made out of granite, and it takes years and years and years and millions of years, not billions, millions of years, according to scientists, before they start to show any actual full blown wear and tear, because granite is one of the strongest known stones. Marble, granite, a lot of the stones that were used to create the pyramids, to create the various different castles, the various different Roman architectural structures and whatnot that are dotted throughout Europe, ages to break down. And most of the reason why they broke down was because of stronger forces than the granite, like the bombings of World War I, World War II, various natural disasters and whatnot that caused the structures to crumble or fall apart or break up. So it goes to show you that our bodies, created by God, even though they, for the most part, will return to dust once time has happened, and they're finding newer ways to preserve bodies. I don't know why. I mean, I think when I go to sit down and make a living will or something like that, one of the things I'm going to say in the will, in fact, most of my in-laws have done this, cremation. Why? One, I don't want some archaeologist digging up my body to find out, anything about me. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's none of their dang business. Granted, I say that now, but then I look back and go, well, if it wasn't for archaeologists digging up bodies and finding, various Norse bodies or Nordic graves and whatnot, and finding their bone structures and the various man-made wares that survived time, that did not deteriorate over time, like combs made out of bones, swords, daggers, jewelry, things like that, we wouldn't know a lot about our especially the Norse people, because they did not have a understandable or full historical account, because their historical records, when they started making actual written historical records, was either in a language that had not been spoken in eons, or written in such a fashion that was more like poetry than history. Take the Havanah. Yes or no, today's Sunday, and I wanted to talk about Christianity, but take the Havanah. The words of wisdom from the Norse people handed down to the Norse people by Odin himself. They're not written in simple historical information. They're written in poem form. So everything's like poetry. And I recently learned, not only through my video game Valhalla, but from some of the things I've been reading, their poetry is called flyting. And flyting was basically using poetry. Two people would go at each other. It was like a poetic rapping, so to speak, where one person would say something in poetry form that was supposed to be a slight or verbal put down, and the opponent would have to say something in poetry or poetic form that would put that person down, and whoever had the better, catchier phrasing would be the victor out of the non-physical, violent combat. Basically, it was combat with words, like rappers today do, but a little bit less vulgar, or maybe just as vulgar. I don't know. But we all, by Christian standards, were created from dust. Now, I'm not going to go into any other religions, but I think Christianity is the only religion that I've read so far that talks about how we were created or how we came about. No other religion really speaks about how we were created. A lot of other religions talk about how the world was created, but nothing about the creation of man. Actually, I take it back. There's one or two different religions that talk about mankind is descended from their deities. So, I don't know. But I, for one, I consider myself what a lot of other Christians might consider themselves, is we're jars of clay. The reason why we say jars of clay is, in fact, there's a musical group called Jars of Clay. Jars of Clay. The reason why I say that we're jars of clay is because, in fact, our bodies are basically dust. It's dirt put together, like, and what gives the jar of clay its life, its mobility, its ability to do what we do, is because if God breathed life into Adam, he basically breathed his energy, his power, his spirit into Adam. And through that, there's a spark within every one of us that comes directly from God. Now, I'm not saying that we're gods, no. But we have the energy that was given to Adam from God within us. And when we pass, whether we're buried whole or cremated, but once the breath of life leaves this jar, this clay vessel, it returns to where it came from. And that's a whole different realm of thought. But that whole realm of thought blends in with into the Native American beliefs. It blends into a few other different belief systems that have similar aspects. One of which is the Native Americans, and I said I wasn't going to talk about anything but Christianity, but it's kind of, well, no, I'm not going to talk about the Native Americans. I'm just going to talk about how it's interesting how Christianity blends into other different cultures throughout Europe and here in the Americas. How the Christian belief system is intertwined into other belief systems, and one fashion or another, even though a lot of Christians will say otherwise, and I've been called worse than a blasphemer. But it for somebody like me who's read in my youth a variety of other different religious beliefs and whatnot, it has gone to prove me, well, I shouldn't say prove me, but it's gone to make me believe that Christianity is just one piece of a bigger mosaic puzzle that most people don't want to look at. They want to think that one piece is the only piece. Um, but anyhow, I won't get into it. Excuse me, I just ran out of breath real quick because I was thinking about so many different things. I'm gonna go ahead and end this today for the time beings, or this particular video. So if you haven't, jumping ahead. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the comment box. I will address them in one way, shape, or form. If you're new to my channel and you want to join, you can go ahead and click on that subscribe button, and then a little bell will pop up, and you can click on that bell, and YouTube will let you know when I put in my next video. And until next time, have a good day. God bless. Bye.